conference record has joined the conference.
This is Lucy Sullivan interviewing Denise LaFalce on October 24th, 2013. So, Denise, can you tell me where and when you received your credentials and where do you currently work?
I received my credentials March 31st, 1984. I took my oral boards at the Graduate Hospital of Philadelphia. I currently work at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
What drew you to EEG and diagnostics?
Oh, I was working right out of high school. I was working in a factory that soldered relays for the government. And one day I looked around and I saw old miserable people, and I thought, I have to get out of here. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to the beach for the weekend, did some soul searching, and realized I needed to make a move. I'm not sure why the picture popped up in my mind, other than I seemed to be drawn to science, but I had a couple of seizures when I was a teenager. I remember sitting in a leather recliner chair, the tech working on my head, soft music playing in the background, lights were out, and at one point did some deep breathing and then fell into a quiet sleep. And I thought, I can do that. I came back. I started calling hospitals about becoming an EEG tech. Little did I know at that time it would be much more than just massaging heads and listening to music.
Was it a popular specialty when you were starting your career?
No, not that I remember. If I didn't have the personal experience, then I probably would not have known anything about it.
Who were your early mentors?
My early mentors were Theda Sanet, who was the program director and the manager at Graduate Hospital, where I went to school, Dr. Richard Harner, Sharon Katz, Judy Manus, and Maureen Mulwinahy, which all had worked at the Graduate Hospital at some point.
What were your earliest career influences?
I knew I always loved the sciences. I actually won a science award in grammar school and continued to enjoy the sciences in high school. So I guess that was why I sort of gravitated towards the medical field.
If you had not become an EEG technologist, what would you have liked to have done?
I wanted to go to school in Hawaii, but I had no clue what I wanted to study, so my parents said no. My parents never pushed me or my siblings to further our education. I don't think at that time they realized how important a degree would become. They just wanted us to be safe, happy, and make good decisions. I liked jewelry, was fascinated with diamonds and how the light made them sparkle. I started to learn about the stones and thought I would go on to get my GEM certificate, but that never came to fruition. Instead, I married someone who had his certificate, and so I learned how to wear the jewelry instead of making the jewelry. Now, if you ask me what I would like to do if I ever quit EEG, I will tell you that I want to dress brides and mothers of the brides. I think it would be such a happy time in a girl's life. I think so many brides make the wrong decisions with their gowns. I want to help them to look and be their best.
Why do you think this field took off when and how it did?
I think it was an easy way to get a decent career, only 1 to 2 years of school, depending upon where you went. You made pretty good money, and there were options to further your education and your salary. As time goes on, the baby boomers are in their senior years. The medical field is the one steady place for employment.
What equipment did you train on, and what were the main limitations of it?
On a Grass 8 and 16 channel machine and also a Beckman machine. And at that time, I didn't think there were any limitations. Looking back now, the disadvantages were the ink that shot out of the pens when a person coughed, moved, or seized. The ink got in all the cracks and crevices in your skin and clothes, and you had to use bleach to get it out. If you had an affair to go to, you knew that you needed to wear a long lab coat and gloves when doing the EEG. Also, looking back, the machines were huge and very heavy to push, especially over the elevator doors and the lip of the elevator. And pushing them on portables were embarrassing. It was like an obstacle course trying to get the big machine in a small intensive care unit.
What other equipment have you used over the years, and could you summarize the pros and cons of each?
I've used the Nihon Koda machine. The pros were the ease of creating the montages on the fly. It was our first piece of an electronic equipment rather than a manual. We loved the video screen portion of it. It was new and exciting and fun. We all fought to use that machine since we only had one. I remember we used the Grass Telefactor Modac monitoring equipment. It had one of those reel-to-reel tape decks that you had to fish the tape through one reel and hope it caught on to the other reel. That was priceless to use. Our first piece of digital equipment at Children's Hospital was Tekka. In 1995, we purchased the Tekka equipment. It was awesome. There was no more paper, no more ink. Our cost savings went down. We did not have to store the paper. We were able to have a private network between the machines in our lab and the neurology department, which was on another floor. We could electronically send data between each machine. In 2001 to current time, we are using Biologic Seagraph. This machine is so user-friendly. It gives us the option to customize our EEG reports with templates. It creates Word documents and generates final reports to be shared through a network drive. CHOP has 8 satellites over Pennsylvania and New Jersey that are networked back to the main hospital, so at any given point in time, we can see EEGs being recorded. We can help a tech who works independently if she's not sure if a patient is seizing. We are in the process of upgrading to Natus NeuroWorks at this time.
What memories do you have of your training program?
Absolutely wonderful, fantastic, and priceless memories. I was the only student. I was treated like a queen. Everybody wanted to help me. I felt special. I got right up there with the medical students during pathology, lab, and brain cutting. The pathologist would actually save me a spot right up front. I was the youngest person in the department, pretty much right out of high school. Everyone in the lab took me under their wing, not only for the EEG education piece, but also introduced me to the social skills of living in the city. We went out to wonderful restaurants, art museums. They showed me the city life and how wonderful it could be.
What are the main ways in which the field has changed over your career?
I think that the biggest thing for me is the EEG equipment has been the biggest change, and now all the options it gives us, reformatting, all the different ways to find foci for potential surgical candidates, the size of the machines. When I started in EEG, there was really one or two vendors, Grass and Nihon Koden. It was very hard to break through if you were another vendor trying to get your equipment purchased in hospitals. Then around 1989, 1990 or so, the doors opened wide and many new vendors came about. Every vendor thought their equipment was the best. You could barter with them and get prices down because there were so many to choose from. Now it's back to one or two vendors over the last year or so, which is Natus and Nihon Koden. So you're pretty much locked in to one or two of those vendors.
How has scientific knowledge changed the field, and what do you think were the big breakthroughs?
I think the upgrade from analog to digital machinery was the biggest for me. The ability to reformat montages, the ability for a neurologist to read from home or a remote site, and also the multiple advanced modalities of EEGs such as IOM, LTM, EMG, evoked potentials.
What are the 2 to 3 big issues in EEG that people are working on to solve today?
I know for me, it's the reimbursement piece as a manager that does over 7,000 EEGs a year. The reimbursement piece for the CPT codes and aligning the billing codes for the professional and technical fees and to make sure that they're proper so billing can happen in a more timely fashion and it can be cohesive between the two departments. The other thing that we're working on is everyone is asking us to do more with less. They're asking, for us to monitor productivity data. So that has been a challenge for me as a manager. LTM and IOM procedures, do they really make a difference in the treatment of patients, or is it just another way for hospitals and physicians to make more money?
What are the main areas of professional discussion or disagreement today?
I think some of the different modalities of EEG that used to be more prominent years gone by and not so now. Do we still need to continue to provide technical services for for endarterectomies, and are evoked potentials really needed? Does it truly provide the answers that we're looking for? Also, policies for monitoring of hypothermia patients, reimbursements for CPT codes. Should nurses have or need better EEG training to detect subclinical seizures while the long-term monitoring is in use? Should we train the nurses to change electrodes and fix electrodes rather than calling a tech in for such a small issue such as that? Much of the advanced EEG monitoring is on-the-job training with self-education, experience, and studying. Should we have schools for the advancement of EEG technologists, for IOM training or spinal surgery, or even now MEGs? Or do we continue to just do on-the-job training?
What are you most proud of in your professional life?
I think passing my EEG boards and then accepting the position at CHOP. After being an EEG tech for 2 years and continuing to work hard, CHOP asked me to become the manager of the department, and 31 and a half years later, I'm still here. I've trained and guided many students that chose to work at CHOP after they graduated, and the majority of them are still with me to this day in some sort of capacity. I got a chance to watch them grow into adulthood and have children of their own, and they've become happy individuals. And also being interviewed by Lucy Sullivan for this.
Where do you see neurodiagnostics in 10 years?
I see it. I see us seeing less patients and more time spent seeing fewer patients, but running studies longer to be able to capture sleep.
What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
In the field of EEG, Theda Sanet once told me, "Be kind to your machine, and your machine will be kind to you in the time of need." And that has been so true. In my personal life, sometimes all it takes is a smile to change someone's day, even if it's only for a minute. And if we really want to love, we must learn to forgive.
Is there anyone else in EEG that you think we should talk to or interview?
I think Judy Pastelacqua, who was the former director of the EEG department at the University of Pennsylvania, she has a wealth of knowledge, and I am sure she would have so much to share.
And who are the prominent electroencephalographers who should be documented?
I feel Dr. Richard Harner, who was my medical director and taught me everything that I know when I was a student at the Graduate Hospital, should be documented. Also, Dr. Samuel Tucker, Dr. Peter Berman, and Dr. Robert Clancy, who are world-known neurologists and all work at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Okay, great. I'm just going to turn off the recording, and then I'll be right back.
Okay.